Good afternoon to everybody tuning into our webinar today. My name is Jackie Lee, a financial compliance officer at the Bereavement Authority of Ontario. And today I'm joined by Stephen Warden, the team lead of finance at the Ontario Public Guardian and Trustee. In this webinar today, the main focus is care and maintenance. This will include understanding your statements that you receive from the OPGT and filing the report on care and maintenance every year for the BAO. If you have any questions, you may ask them in the questions tab or in the chat and we'll address them at the end. Once this webinar ends, you will receive a recording of it as well as the slides presented in this webinar for your reference. So without further ado, let's get started. Our agenda for today is as follows. First, we'll take a look at the background of both the BAO and the OPGT, the responsibilities of the OPGT, the reporting requirements for cemeteries. After that, we'll get into the breadth of this webinar, which is understanding your OPGT statement and translating that statement to your Form 2, the report on care and maintenance. So first of all, what is the BAO? Well, we're all about consumer protection. The BAO is a government delegated authority that is responsible for administering the Funeral, Burial, and Cremation Services Act on behalf of the Ministry of Government and Consumer Services. The BAO regulates and supports licensed funeral establishment operators, directors and pre-planners, cemetery, crematorium, and alternative disposition operators, transfer service operators, and lastly, sales representatives across Ontario. The BAO is wholly funded by licensee fees, which do not include tax dollars. Next, I'll pass it off to Stephen to describe what is the OPGT.
Good afternoon, everyone. The Office of the Public Guardian Trustee is established as a corporation sole by the Public Guardian Trustee Act of Ontario, and it serves the interest of private clients, and we have independence from the Crown or the Province of Ontario on those issues. We act as property personal care guardian, make medical treatment decisions, and provide legal services for mentally incapable adults. We investigate allegations of harm to mentally incapable adults, administer estates to those intestate or with no next of kin in Ontario. We search for errors and act as the accountant for the Superior Court of Justice. We also administer trust funds for cemeteries, protect public interest in charitable properties, and deal with forfeited corporate property. On the next slide, the OPG provides the following services to our cemetery trust accounts. We receive funds from the cemetery operators as prescribed by the BAO. We pay out interest income annually in January for the previous year, and we send out a statement of account annually in January for the previous year. Any communications to the OPGT can be sent to the email that's on the screen.
So next up is the topic of the reporting requirements for cemeteries. There are two forms that all cemetery operators must submit every year. The Form 1, also known as the Annual Licensure Renewal, is the form that you fill out to renew your license every year. The Form 2, also known as the Report on Care and Maintenance, which you fill out to indicate any activity in your care and maintenance fund, must be accompanied by a trust statement from your financial institution. If the fund has over $500,000, then you must also submit audited financial statements. Lastly, if you accept prepaid funds for the cemetery, you must also submit a report of prepaid funds. The reporting timelines are as follows. For Form 1, it is due March 31st of each year. For Form 2, it is normally due within 3 months of your fiscal year end. If you are required to submit audited financial statements, then it will be due within 6 months of your fiscal year end. For the report of prepaid funds, this is due within 3 months of your fiscal year end. And now for the main topic of this webinar, I'll pass it back to Stephen to describe to you how you can understand the OPGT statement.
Thank you, Jackie. The OPGT has one statement format that serves 3 client groups. Group 1 is only invested in the OPGT cash fund. Group 2 has two investments. They're invested in our OPGT cash, as well as our OPGT Canadian Income and Dividend Fund. And we have a small group of clients that actually have OPGT cash and other investments. The impact of this is our Group 1 is serviced by the OPGT statement. Groups 2 and 3 do require some additional steps to complete the Form 2. And this is essentially combining or adding amounts from the OPGT statement as well as from the supplemental investment statement. Next slide, please. The OPGT statement has three sections to it. The first section is labeled Income Account, and this lists the gross income less compensation fees charged by the OPGT. The second section is called a Capital Account, and this is essentially the OPGT cash holding for Group 1. The third section is a section entitled Invested Capital, and this is for Groups 2 or 3 who have holdings other than OPGT cash. To take a look at Section 1 Income Account in a little more detail, this is not required for the Form 2, but this does list the gross income less compensation fees charged by the OPGT. The last line in this section, which is December 31st income to date, is the net income that the OPGT has sent to you. And again, this is the OPGT cash payment only. If you're on Group 1, this is your only income. If you're in Group 2 or 3, this is only a portion of your income. This is an example of the income account statement. And you can see the last line, the 31 December, the income to date, this is the amount. And in this example, the file received a payment of $1,156.53 in net OPGT interest. As we move to Section 2 of the statement, the capital account, this is the OPGT cash holding. And again, Group 1, this is your only statement. For Group 2 and 3, this is only part of your statement. The December 31st cash capital balance account previous December 31st, this is the opening line, or line 1 on your Form 2. And the December 31st balance cash capital account is the closing balance, or line 10 on the Form 2. The lines in between are the deposits received at the OPGT. This is an example of the capital account. This file started the year with $108,640.42 in OPGT cash. It had a deposit of $4,470 and ended the year with a cash balance of $113,110.42. As we move to the next slide, this is the section of the statement, Invested Capital. If you do not have this section, you are in Group 1 and you can proceed for your Form 2. If you do have this section, you are in Group 2 or 3 and you do require some additional activities to complete your Form 2. This is a supplemental statement which has just been placed in the mail to all the persons in Group 2. This supplemental statement, OPGT CIDF, replaces that previous invested capital portion. It will identify the income paid to you from the OPGT Canadian Income and Dividend Fund. It will identify the capital gains invested, and it also indicates the Form 2 amounts. The first line, December 31st, 2021, this is the line, the opening line, line 1 on the Form 2. This would be combined with your OPGT cash opening balance to have the grand total that would be placed on the Form 2. The next 12 lines are the monthly payments that are generated from our Canadian Income and Dividend Fund. We have placed a subtotal on this, and this is a payment the OPGT has recently sent to you. This is a payment separate from the OPGT cash payment that is also being sent to you. There are two more lines on this statement. Line 8, which is the second last line, the OPGT Canadian Income and Dividend Fund had capital gains, and per the BAO rules, the capital gains have to be reinvested. In this example, you can see it was $359.64. The dollar amount, it purchased 32.535 units. This would be entered on line 8 of the Form 2. The last line is line 10 and is your closing balance to be combined with your OPGT cash for line 10 on the Form 2. I now hand it back to Jackie to walk through these examples.
Thank you, Stephen. So from the examples that Stephen showed, here are the important fields on Form 2 that you will correspond your statement with. On your statement, you will find the opening book value, the amount of realized capital gains or losses, the ending book value, and lastly, the amount of interest you earned. When filling out Form 2, the numbers you put on the form must match exactly with the OPGT statement. For example, if you belong to Group 1, and that means you only have one statement from the OPGT, where a short version of that statement looks like my diagram here on the left, there will only be a few things to look out for. At the end of your income account, where it says income to date, that is how much interest you earned for the year. This will go into the additional information section of Form 2. In the capital account section of the statement, the line where it says cash capital account previous December 31st is your opening book value. Next, the sum of your total deposits for the year can be seen in the line called capital income. Any deposits you've made into the fund must also match with the info you report on Form 2. Deposits made are generally due to a sale in the year, or maybe perhaps you owed money into the fund from sales in the past year. Lastly, the line called balance cash capital account is your ending book value. On the next slide here, I have an example from our Form 2 using the same deposit number from the previous slide. In this example, our cemetery operator has made 5 plot sales during the year, of which they sold them for a grand total of $11,750. The calculation for care and maintenance can be seen in the box on the left-hand side of the table. For this example, it is the greater of $290 per plot sale or 40% of the total selling price. In this case, 40% of the $11,750 is $4,470, which is the greater amount. This is the same number that showed up in the previous slide for the total deposits. The opening book value will be input in number 1, and the ending book value will be input in number 10. Below number 10, there is an additional section that asks for additional information. You may indicate the amount of interest you earned in the first box. For those that belong to Group 2 or 3, meaning that you have 2 separate statements from the OPGT, then you will have to make an extra step. The slide I'm currently on is actually the same as the first slide for Group 1 as shown before. The process is exactly the same for the first statement. However, you will also have a statement that may look unfamiliar to you. This is an example of how the second statement appears. You have a section called the holding summary and a section called the income listing. To make things easier for you to understand, the relevant boxes are highlighted with arrows coming out of them to describe to you what the important number is that you have to take in. In the holding summary, at the end, you will see a line called book value. This is your ending book value for your investment account at the OPGT, and this gets added to number 10. In the income listing, you have only 2 lines to pay attention to, which are the income distribution and capital gain distribution. Income distribution is related to interest earned, and capital gain distribution is the reinvested realized capital gains for your investment. In order to fill out Form 2 successfully, if you belong to this group, you'll have to add the amounts from your first statement and your second statement. I've added up all the examples here for your ease of reference. If you belong to Group 1, the column where it says first statement are the only numbers you will have to input for Form 2. If you belong to group 2 or 3, as I mentioned before, you'll have to add up the numbers from your first statement and your second statement to get your totals for Form 2, which can be seen in the highlighted area on the right. You will use these same numbers and input them into your Form 2. In this example again, we're using the total of the two statements. The opening book value goes in number 1, realized capital gains or losses in number 8, the ending book value in number 10, and lastly, the amount of interest earned in the additional information section. Once again, everyone here will receive both a recording of this webinar as well as a copy of these slides, so you can refer to them when filling out your Form 2. I have one more important point to add, and that is where to deposit your care and maintenance. I just wanted to remind you all to not send any care and maintenance deposits to the BAO, as these are intended to go into your care and maintenance trust fund held by the OPGT. You can mail your care and maintenance contributions to their address at 595 Bay Street, number 800, Toronto, Ontario, M5G 1M6. So that concludes this webinar. We'll spend the next 10 to 15 minutes for a Q&A session. If you have any questions, please ask us here in this webinar. For questions unrelated to this webinar or are complex in nature, please contact the financial compliance team at the BAO, either by email at trust@thebao.ca or give us a call on our main phone line at 647-483-2645.
Thank you, Jackie and Stephen, and we'll welcome your questions by chat. Please just fill in the chat box you'll see on your screen and send us your question, and we'll see what we can answer live in this meeting. As well, Jackie can follow up with you after the meeting by email, as you said.
Of course.
Well, you guys were pretty clear. We don't actually have a question yet. We'll wait a little bit longer.
Yeah, we can maybe give it like 5 minutes, see if any questions come in.
Yeah, we'll see. We have one unrelated, and I can answer this one. Person is asking, is a niche the same as a columbarium? A niche fits inside a columbarium. That's the short answer. Now, any questions about this presentation, folks? Oh, here we go. We have a few that have come in. I see Stephen's ready. You can even see him. Here's a question that's just come in, and that says, can you just go over what goes on the previous year-end total? That's what gets me confused as to the capital account total.
Yes, so that's number 2 on the Form 2, the previous amount that's owing. So actually, is that can you just repeat the question again, just so I can be sure?
Yeah, it says, can you go over what goes on the previous year-end total? That's what gets me confused as to the capital account total.
Okay, so I think they're referring to the opening balance, if I'm not mistaken. So on this slide here, you can see cash capital account previous December 31st. This is your opening balance, and this is what goes in number 1 of your form. The 108,640 cents in this example. This would be what goes in number 1. Does that answer your question?
We have another question here, and the text reads, for checks that have been sent to the OPG in 2022 but have not cleared by year end, is there a way to show it pending?
Stephen, would you be able to answer that?
Yeah, I do believe we wouldn't know what hasn't been received. Is there not a box 2 or 3 on the Form 2 to show items that have been sent but not received?
Yes. Yes, there is a box that you can indicate on the Form 2 to indicate that it has not been received yet, but you have sent a check or some sort of payment to the OPGT.
Thank you. We have another question here. Have you sent the statements out yet?
These statements are literally on the way to the mailroom and Canada Post this week. The supplementary statements I know have been dropped off. The others are at the Queen's printer to be printed out. So if they're not in the post by the end of they should be in the post by the end of this week. So you should start receiving them into next week.
Thank you, Stephen. That answers a handful of questions we've got here. Here's another one. We still deal with our regular bank for C&M deposits and totals. Is that not so? They're asking, do we still deal with our regular bank?
So if you have a care and maintenance account at a bank, then yes, you can still regularly deal with the bank. This webinar was specifically for those cemetery operators who are with the OPGT and have a care and maintenance fund with the OPGT.
Thank you, Jackie. Here's another question. We get interest in early February, but last year, for the first time, we got some additional in March. What is this about? Our interest received in January this year is very low and is confusing. Can you explain?
Yeah, so the last year, as you know, we have two groups. We have the group one, which is the OPGT cash, and that actually is our own fund which pays out. The group two was actually payments that were calculated and paid the last business day of the month, but the OPGT always recorded those payments on the first of the following month. So 2021 was a changeover where we actually had 13 payments into it. The payment amount does vary because of the Canadian Income and Dividend Fund. It is the accumulation of the underlying investments. So unlike the OPGT cash, the amount does vary. And this year there was a larger distribution, but a lot of it was capital gains, which we had to reinvest. So that's the amount. Those payments have already been adjusted for that to come through. So the March payment, which was a bit late, was a technical delays on our end due to systems. The amount being lower this year, that's relative to the underlying investments and accrued income. The side note as well is we are prepared and moving to our new system. So for 2023, there will only be one statement, much more easier to read. We won't have these two-step portions.
Thank you, Stephen. Here's another question. Hi, our cemetery is a small volunteer-run operation affiliated with a religious church organization. With respect to capital gains or decrease, how does this change in the new report format? And is that changing?
So for capital gains, it has always been a rule that they are to be reinvested. This is nothing new. It's just simply a change of how these statements are viewed from the OPGT side, and yeah, there's no difference at all from what was done in previous years till now.
Yeah, I will just add to that. The capital gains have always had to stay reinvested. One of the drawbacks to our previous system is that all income was set to pay from our funds. And this does tie into the previous question because we had an income and capital gain that was paid. That was paid into the OPGT cash fund. And then we had to isolate what was the capital gain, and that was remained invested in the care and maintenance fund and the OPGT cash portion. And that is why the remaining income was paid later. I do believe somebody said in March. This year, as you can tell from the example, the capital gains were reinvested directly in the fund in additional units. So that was, they were retained within the OPGT CIDF, and you will receive that accounting piece showing the additional units purchased.
Thank you, Stephen and Jackie. We are a very small cemetery and have no plots left to sell. If we are transferring a plot to another person, does that money have to be sent to the OPGT?
So I feel like this question may require a bit more detail. I do encourage you to send this question to our email at trust@thebao.ca. We'll gladly answer within 24 hours to 48. Please include a little bit more detail, as in maybe like if it's a resale or if it's, if the prices have changed and you're changing up the price. I ask that you please include these details as well.
Okay, thanks. The amount that was outstanding at the end of 2021 but cleared in 2022 is this put in the same spot you mentioned a while ago?
Sorry, can you just repeat the question again?
Yeah, I'm not sure what's intended either, but here it is. The amount that was outstanding at the end of 2021 but cleared in 2022, is this put in the same spot?
Okay. So that amount will actually go in number 2 of your form, which is for previous amounts owing.
Oh, thanks, Jackie. Here's another question. What if your opening balance doesn't match line 10 from the previous report using this method?
If it does not match, I ask that you please send us a reconciliation of, perhaps maybe you have a different number. You can always give us a call if you do have any questions or are confused. We'll gladly, take each step with you along the way and hold your hand. But if it doesn't match, there will be questions from us.
Okay, thank you. Here's another question, just partially written in note form, but here's what it says. I presume any payments due are still auto transferred to our bank? Question point.
Yes, if the OPGT has your EFT information on file, that is where the payments have been sent.
Thank you, Stephen. Here's another question. Is there an option to have statements emailed to us? Is there an option to pay the CNM online instead of mailing a check?
Both of those options, with our new system, we've moved to the theoretical yes. They probably will not be online as viable options for at least a few months or into the summer, maybe even the end of the year. We want to make sure the base of the system works. The system has some neat features to it, such as we can move to a monthly pay of interest, send out statements more than annually, etc. We want to get those features up and running in those interactions first, and then we can move to some of those additional features. While our investment statement system can handle it, it is still so many steps for not quality control, just general controls and privacy in place to have automatic debits and the emailing of statements at this time. It is a common platform we're headed to, though.
Thank you, Stephen. Here's another question. Is the statement the same format as other years?
Yes, if it's the base, the core statement that goes to everyone is the same format that the OPGT has used since that system was designed in quite a few decades ago.
Okay, good. And we have quite a few people just saying thank you. So here's one saying it's going to make reporting much easier. So thanks, that's good to hear. Here's another question. Will yearly account statements be emailed in future years versus ground mail?
Again, that is something we hope to have turned on by the end of 2023. We will keep everyone posted on that.
Yeah, thanks. Popular question. The prescribed contributions wording. Here's a question on that. I believe was wrong for a few years and didn't mention the or in the dollar amount, quote unquote, or percent of selling price. It said and instead. So people are wondering or this person's wondering if that was an error. Do we know?
So it is the greater of either, one number or the percentage. It's always been like that. If you'd like, maybe we could send you an email of, maybe the past couple of years.
That's good advice.
Yeah. So yeah, it's been the same for the past decade plus or so.
Oh, okay, thanks very much. Are all cemeteries, large or small, involved with the OPGT?
So all cemetery operators, all small, medium, and large, are involved with the OPGT as well.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, let me rephrase that. We don't manage the care management for all cemeteries in Ontario. We're more of the last resort piece come to it. Not every cemetery is our client or has an account with the OPGT, but all do fall under the BAO.
Thank you, Stephen. Here's another question. Several years ago, about half of our C&M funds were moved into investments that don't pay out interest. The capital gains are reinvested. We receive nowhere near enough to cover our maintenance costs. Do we have any say in how you invest our funds?
The answer to that, with our new investment system, we actually have a more diverse and prudent asset mix that we're going to apply across the board to our cemeteries. That there'll be some additional information that will be coming to the team, which will generate higher incomes across the board, as well as offer some inflation protection. That's a little bit out of the scope for this specific session, but those files involved, we will be sending out communications along that line in the near future.
Thank you. What is the minimum amount for 2023? In 2022, it was $290.
Right. So starting January 1st of 2022, I'm just going to scroll up in the PowerPoint just a little bit. So the rates that you see on the left-hand side on this chart here, on this table, are the new rates as of January 1st, 2022 and onwards. So nothing has changed except for whatever the new numbers are as of January 1st, 2022.
Here's a question. Our cemetery is an old one with small care and maintenance account. Is there any way to minimize the fees charged?
By fees, I assume they meant the care maintenance contributions, and the simple answer is no. This is a requirement, and that cannot be changed.
And we have someone else just saying thank you, and that's all the questions. I've tried to just filter out the ones that were the same to what you've already answered. So thanks everyone for joining. Jackie, I'll turn it back to you and Stephen.
Yeah, thank you everyone for tuning in. If there are no more questions, we can conclude this webinar. And once again, you'll receive a recording of this webinar as well as the slides for your reference.
Yeah, and we'll be sharing the slides in our next Lifeline newsletter as well. So it'll be available to anyone. Thank you very much.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.